I used to think that if I felt fear, it made me weak. I used to think quietly, well, if I'm afraid of doing that, I don't want to tell anyone that I'm afraid of doing that. But, I found that in saying, okay, I'm going to do a speech, I'm afraid of giving a speech, it breaks the power of it. It makes it seem less scary. And then someone else can say to you, oh, I'm so scared of speaking too, but the last time I did it, this is what happened and this is what I used. And it's in being honest and vulnerable that we find out that our experiences are often shared.
Welcome to Jane Jackson Careers, a podcast that takes your career to the next level. Here's your host, Jane Jackson, author of Amazon Careers bestseller, Navigating Career Crossroads.
Welcome to my Careers podcast, where I interview fascinating professionals who've made amazing career changes or are leaders in their field. Now, today, I am so excited and I'm so honored because I have none other than 10 Seconds of Courage, Nadine Champion, on the show. Sensei Nadine Champion is an inspiring international keynote speaker and awarded martial artist with over 30 years experience. She has successfully fought and won many battles in her life, from title fights in the ring to overcoming cancer. An acclaimed motivational speaker, her 10 Seconds of Courage TEDx Sydney talk is noted as one of the most memorable of all time. And I can vouch for that because I listened to it. I actually watched it when I was at the hairdresser because I couldn't get into TEDx Sydney that year. And I was crying because she was so inspirational. Wait till you hear her talk. Now, a little bit of background about Nadine. In her youth, she loved the film The Karate Kid and spent 20 years learning profoundly life-changing lessons from her own Mr. Miyagi-style teacher, Benny the Jet Urquidez, an undefeated world champion fighter. She's dedicated using the knowledge she gained through martial arts as a metaphor for life to transform the way people think and feel about themselves. Now, before I tell you any more, I would rather Nadine tell us her story. So first of all, welcome Nadine to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jane.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here. I'm really, really looking forward to hearing your entire story. So how about, to kick us off, Nadine, tell us a little bit about you as a little girl and what your career aspirations might have been even before the Karate Kid.
Well, I think that was sort of where it started because it started so young. I wanted to be a martial arts teacher. I also wanted to be a lawyer. I'm not sure how those two things fused together necessarily, but originally I had hopes of going to law school and pursuing that sort of path because I knew that I loved language. And I had a vague dream when I was about 12 of writing a book one day and being an author. So I had sort of these fluid dreams that I wasn't completely locked into. But the seeds had been planted, definitely. Something to do with speaking a lot and something to do with writing a lot.
Oh, and all of that's happening now, isn't it? So you watched The Karate Kid and that inspired you. And is that when you started taking lessons and then just slowly getting into it?
Yeah, I saw the Karate Kid movie right around the same time that my brother started doing martial arts. And I was allowed to go along and watch, and I almost imploded on the sidelines because I wanted to try so badly. And it was one of those things, I don't know if you've had this experience, but the first time that you tried to do something, the first time you had a little taste of an experience, you fell in love with it. I've had a couple of small moments like that in my life with different things, but this was overwhelming. So I tried doing martial arts the first time, and about 5 minutes into it, it all made sense to me. And for some little kids, that's riding horses or doing ballet, and for me, it was leaping around like a ninja. So I fell in love, but I fell in love not just with the movement of it. For me, it was the magic and beauty in it was all about the traditions that came along with it and all of the character traits that martial artists were encouraged to develop. And I think that happened the moment that I stepped onto the mat to join the class. I wasn't allowed to just stand anywhere. I had to stand in a very specific spot, and I had to line up correctly, and we had to make a certain position and stand there quietly. So from the very first moment, it was all about discipline and developing these character traits. And that's what really made it a lasting pursuit for me.
How exciting to actually be standing on that mat and then knowing that you're a part of something that actually, while you're talking about it, makes me feel excited too, because it's almost like being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And the traditions and the philosophies of martial arts has been going for thousands and thousands of years. And then, I think that discipline and knowing that there's a structure and there's a meaning to it as well. So in a way, it's not just a sport, it's spiritual in its own way too, yes?
Absolutely. The sporting part of it, I think, is interesting for a couple of years. So for me, it's been a 30-year pursuit. And if it had purely been a physical endeavor, I think I would have become bored of it after a certain amount of time. For me, the thing that's really kept me going with it has been the fact that it is something that's steeped in tradition, and there are definite codes of honor and behavior that are attached to it, which makes it interesting for me in that there's always something else to learn. Physically, learning the movements only takes a certain amount of years, but to learn all of the character traits that are involved in it, they are the things that take not just 1,000 repetitions of practice, but 20, 30 years worth of repetitions of practice. And I'm happy to say that I'll be learning those, I think, for the rest of my life. But, I was having a conversation with someone a couple of days ago, and we were talking about your purpose, finding your purpose professionally. And I explained to her that the things that I have found as being my purpose professionally, I overlooked for many years because they were so obvious. The things that I was the best at naturally in my life, the things that I was the most passionate about, I perceived them as being a hobby or a sporting pursuit rather than seeing them as being something that I should do with my whole heart and soul and for a living. Because I'd slotted them into a certain box, and this person was saying something very similar about their own lives. She was a lawyer, saying, but I'm so passionate about something else and I've done it professionally, but I don't know if that's what I should continue to do. So I think for me, I overlooked becoming some of the things that I've become for some time because they were too simple. It was too clear. So I thought I had to be wrong. So I've since looked back on that and thought, well, it was staring me in the face. And I've had that conversation many, many times with people, and as I'm sure you have, about what they should do for a living. So I went into becoming a bodyguard when I was quite young, because I thought that was the kind of career that I might be able to use my martial arts training, not just physically, hopefully not physically, but the idea of being very aware of my surroundings, of protecting others, and pre-planning and being disciplined. That was all part of it. So I thought that was a logical career progression. But for me, what I ended up doing was teaching. And I truly fell in love with teaching, helping other people.
Oh, that's so wonderful. You know what's so interesting, Nadine? I was reading an article by Seth Godin this morning, and it was all about following your passion, because so many people think that they shouldn't follow their passion, because if they do, they'd be the starving artists in a turret somewhere. And it's like, if you follow your passion, you're going to be super poor, or you can't make a living out of, really enjoying what you do. And he disagrees with it, and I disagree with it too. And obviously you do. It's like, if you really love what you do, you don't have to starve because of it. You turn it into a profession. And if you're determined enough and you've got the desire and you really know, that true purpose and the why, it's so interesting. I've also been listening to Fun Cynic and a Start With Why, and it's all to do with your purpose. It seems like you found your purpose so early on, and you're absolutely right. If you followed your instincts, you would be doing what you're doing now back then, but you've had so many interesting twists and turns in your life as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's all timing, but I love what you said about following your instincts. I'm a firm believer in women's intuition or gut intuition. You know what your strengths are. But I think as a culture, we don't have those conversations very easily. I think we need often a coach to bring us to our strengths so that we see ourselves more clearly. And I think people get it wrong. Like you were saying, they think that if they do the thing that they love, there's no reason why you should survive on $1 a day if you're doing your most passionate pursuit. And don't get me wrong, I have had moments, especially when I was younger, where I did the thing I loved for not very much money, just for purely the love of it. And I see that as my development period where I was learning the ropes and learning my craft in a different way. And, I think that means a lot to me now, having those conversations where I say, I would do what I do for free and meaning it. Because at the time I virtually was doing it for free. But, I think those things are almost like earning the right to charge what you're worth later in life, and really building a solid foundation.
And
so
you certainly...
No problem charging what I'm worth now.
Yeah, and you certainly have to hone your craft as well. And I think a certain level of maturity and having gone through many life experiences, and you've gone through some really tough stuff with regard to your health too. How do you develop that resilience and self-reliance to overcome everything that you've gone through? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So let me put it in context for you. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of blood cancer, about 4 years ago, almost to the day, actually. And that was a really life-changing moment for me. I was 37 years old, and I was at what I felt was the top of my profession at the time. I was teaching martial arts and doing mindset coaching, high-performance mindset coaching. And I'd had a waiting list for nearly a decade. I was very highly sought after, and I didn't have any more hours in the day. So I thought that I was really at the top of my game. I was at the top of my game as an athlete. I'd won a lot of different titles and was doing really well. I was very physically fit. And then all of a sudden my life circumstances changed out of nowhere. And I think a lot of people know that feeling. Perhaps something's happened with their company. 1 minute it's going really well, and the next minute they've been retrenched, or their own personal business has changed. And I think it can be incredibly challenging to be resilient in those moments. For me, I was unable to work for 6 months. So I really had a moment where I thought, what am I going to do with my life from here? Am I going to try to make it what it was before? And interestingly enough, because there's a physical element to what I do, I could not actually physically go back to doing what I was doing before to the extent that I was doing it. So I had those moments of self-doubt and panic where I wasn't feeling particularly resilient. I think we all have that stuff cave in on us sometimes where we hesitate and we get fearful about what's going to happen next, especially professionally. Like it's so easy to be resilient in your personal life, but in our professional life, it's not always up to us, the extent that we can climb to or what's going to happen next. So I definitely had some moments of doubt, but I decided to have a pivot in my career and try a few different things and put myself further out there. And I think, excuse me, the thing that I'm most grateful for about having been through that illness is that it gave me the freedom to fail. It gave me the freedom to try things without being so scared about what was going to happen next. Because we're here for a limited time, and I had played it quite safe and played it to my strengths for a long time, and I was kind of wondering about a few other things. So it was an interesting opportunity to care a little bit less and try a bit more. So I did.
Yeah, and what happened was about 4 years ago. That was when I first met you, and when I first met you, it was amazing because you were going through that transition at that period of time, and I wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen or what pivot you were going to make. And,
neither was I.
and then not long after that, you did something phenomenal, absolutely amazing. For your first public talk, you were on the TEDx Sydney stage.
I was. They asked me to be the closing speaker at the Sydney Opera House.
I know. And so there you go.
Yeah, it's a small thing.
It was, that honestly was phenomenal. Tell me about that experience, because honestly, it made me cry. It's made, the world cry. Your 10 seconds of courage talk it just blows me away, even now just thinking about it, because it gives me goosebumps. Talk me through all of that.
Thank you, Jane. That's lovely. It was a crazy experience. It was one of those moments in life where, someone asks you a question. I had a friend ask me a simple question very casually one day: would you ever think about doing a TEDx talk? And I think most people would say yes, in that sort of setting. It was an informal conversation, and the theory of it was an instant yes. Sure, I'd love to. That would be great. In a personal way, but also a professional opportunity. I'd never considered being a speaker before, and I had no idea if I could do it or not. It was interesting because I was in a very vulnerable place. It was only 1 year after I'd finished cancer treatment, so the idea of standing on a stage with thousands of people looking at me was very uncomfortable for me, probably more than any other moment in my life. So it took a real little burst of courage for me internally to say yes. The next thing I knew, my friend who I'd been having this casual conversation with revealed to me that she was actually involved in organising TEDx Sydney and was putting my name forward. So I wrote a speech about the thing that, the idea behind TEDx is ideas worth sharing. And I wrote a speech about an idea that meant the world to me, which is 10 seconds of courage. And, and talking about my relationship with my mentor, my sensei in Benny the Jet Yukides. And, the idea with 10 seconds of courage is something that it moves beyond just a concept when played in a martial arts scenario, because of the fusion between the mental and the physical. But I think there's a fusion between mental and physical in everything we do. Say you're about to go for a job interview. Yes, it's about what you say, but you also have to get yourself brave enough to walk into the room and shake the person's hand and look them in the eye. And, there's a physical element to that burst of courage that you have in putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. So for me, I was fusing the physical and the mental in giving that speech. And I always say to people, 10 seconds of courage is such a beautiful thing and such a powerful thing in my life, because it's the difference between starting and not starting. It's the difference between staying stuck in inaction and hesitation and self-doubt and just taking that first step towards trying something new, putting yourself out there, putting your hand up and saying, I want to be more than I am today. So I did that on the TEDx Sydney stage. I gave a speech. I didn't know if I would be any good at public speaking or not, but I gave it a go. And, and then I said to everybody, it's not just about what you know. There are people who can study to the ends of the earth and never put any of it into practice. It's about what you do. So I did something physical in that speech at the end.
You did?
Really made myself vulnerable. And, the thing for me that made it powerful, and where apparently all the tears come from for people, is that it was a real challenge. It wasn't a challenge that I knew I could succeed at. It wasn't something that was manufactured. It was just having a moment in my life where I thought, you know what? I don't mind if I fail at this. If I fail, I'm going to fail spectacularly.
Right, it would have been spectacular on the TEDx stage.
It really would have.
I think we'd better tell the listeners what you were doing. Nadine was on the TEDx stage delivering this phenomenal talk all about her life, which had me almost in tears anyway. But because of all the treatment that you'd gone through for your health, you hadn't actually done that kick where you break the not the kick with the. What do you call it? The palm strike. There we go. We get the technical terms here. The palm strike to break a piece of wood. And you hadn't done it for how long?
About 3 years. So a long time since before I had cancer.
So 3 years. So Nadine decided to do the palm strike and break that piece of wood after 3 years of not having done it on the TEDx stage. That was really brave. It was, my heart was in my mouth watching that. It was amazing, and the same for everybody else. So talk us through that moment, because it was really special.
Oh, thank you. It was, I've been quite successful in the things that I've pursued in many avenues in life. And at that moment in my life, I was so physically vulnerable that I couldn't take the lid off a bottle of water. I was very physically fragile in a way I'd never been before. And, I think that the challenge in doing that for me was I didn't want to move forward in my life being disingenuous. I didn't want to give a speech about courage, but secretly know that I was afraid, because they had asked me at TEDx to do a martial arts demonstration. And a couple of months before, I'd said no. And then I wrote a speech about courage. And as I was doing that, I realized I'm going to give a speech about courage, but secretly, the only reason I don't want to do a demonstration is that I'm afraid. And I was afraid of who I'd become. Am I really who I think I am? Or am I now another version of myself? And I think, as I was saying before, when you've had something happen in your life, personally and professionally, that rocks you, it makes you question, what am I worth now? Who am I? What am I capable of? If you lose your position in a company and then go and ask for the same position somewhere else, there may be a moment of questioning your worth and ability. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was having that on a number of levels personally, and I had a choice. Did I want to keep feeling that way, or did I want to find out what I was capable of? So I decided to find out in front of a whole lot of people, and I was genuinely scared. I really didn't know if I could do it, but that's what made it powerful for me. I didn't know if I could do it. And I was so tempted, as I'm sure many of your listeners will relate to, I was so tempted just to stay in my comfort zone, just to do the thing that I thought I could do, just to give the speech and hurry off the stage. But, if my martial arts experience has taught me anything, it's about what you're prepared to test. The real payoff is when you put yourself out there and find out for real what you can do, for real how high you can go. And, that's been a real learning for me. So I found out for real on the TEDx stage what I was capable of. And in that moment, and you can see it on YouTube, it's written all over my face. I'm having a moment of serious self-doubt. And then the outcome of it was life-changing for me. And I've taken that lesson and channeled it into all kinds of different avenues professionally in the last few years, because I already knew that lesson, but in doing it yet again, in reminding myself of it yet again, I really discovered the way forward in my life, which is to face the fear, right, and test the theory of what I know and put myself out there more, because sometimes things don't work out, but sometimes they do. And they work out better than you could have possibly imagined.
Yeah. And also you allowed yourself to be vulnerable in front of the world, really. And we were with you at that time. We felt what you were feeling. It was like, come on, Nadine. And I think it was like this global energy that must have channeled through absolutely everywhere. I feel all tearful just talking about it now. Oh. It was honestly, it was so inspiring. It was great. And from that, and the standing ovation, and you looked so proud, it's like, yeah, I did it. I'm so proud of myself that I actually did it, because you didn't know. It really was a magical moment that I think everyone will always remember. And I'm going to actually put that video up on my show notes for this episode on janejacksoncoach.com. You can find that there. Just type in Nadine Champion and it'll be there. And so from there, Nadine, you are now an international speaker. Okay, you're going around the world inspiring people. Tell me about your new life.
Well, it happened at that moment where, the board broke and everything changed. I changed internally in that moment and regained my confidence. And I thought, wow, if I put myself out there and I'm prepared to be vulnerable and I'm prepared to try things, good things happen. So the next morning I woke up and I got a phone call saying, from a lovely lady who I didn't realize was the head of the biggest speakers bureau in Australia, saying, would you like to do that again? Would you like to give a speech again? And I thought, well, that was kind of fun. I'd like to do it again. And the next thing I knew, I had a whole new career that took off very, very quickly. She told me to brace myself, and I said, what for? I didn't know what was going to happen. But, I've been incredibly lucky. I've been around Australia and overseas, talking to people about just facing their fears and being true to themselves and listening to that gut instinct about, what you're able to do and your own bravery. So I've been very, very lucky, to be able to pursue that. And, it doesn't matter whether I'm speaking, to a small group of executive assistants, or I'm off at Facebook or speaking to all of the new AFL recruits. I've spoken to all kinds of different groups of people. Everybody has the same reaction, because I think it's not just an idea for sporty martial arts people. These kind of concepts are the things that we all feel in our quiet moments, those moments of hesitation and doubt and, wanting to be brave, but we feel afraid of what might happen. And we question ourselves at times. I think that anyone who doesn't do that may have something a little bit wrong with them. We all have those human reactions to things. So I used to think that if I felt fear, it made me weak. I used to think quietly, well, if I'm afraid of doing that, I don't want to tell anyone that I'm afraid of doing that. But, I've found that in saying, okay, I'm going to do a speech. I'm afraid of giving a speech. It breaks the power of it. It makes it seem less scary. And then someone else can say to you, oh, I'm so scared of speaking too, but the last time I did it, this is what happened and this is what I used. And it's in being honest and vulnerable that we find out that our experiences are often shared. So that's what I get to do for a living now. I share my experience and everyone's nodding along with me going, I feel the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Because you've been vulnerable, you've made your transition, you had these massive, massive health challenges and self-doubt. And thank you so much for relating it to career transition as well, because this is what my clients go through. It's like something has happened, it's out of their control. Suddenly they feel that there's nothing they can do about it. But actually, when you tap into your strengths and your reason for being and what you really feel passionate about, yes, you can reinvent yourself. And you've reinvented yourself so well. Now, tell me about the book.
Well, the book is also called 10 Seconds of Courage. So, we were talking before about going with your instincts. I knew that the thing that I wanted to focus on was this life lesson that I'd had. I didn't realize the extent I was going to be able to do it to. But I knew that I should go in this direction. So I kept going in this direction, and it turned into a speaking career, and it turned into the opportunity to write a book. But even then, the director of TEDx very kindly sent my YouTube video of my TEDx talk to his publisher at Allen & Unwin and said, I think this would be a fantastic book. And he CC'd me in on that email, and my little professional heart lit up. I thought, I'm going to get to be an author, dream come true. And in that moment, I realized, excuse me, that was a professional pursuit that I had never actually fully developed. I knew in my heart that it was something I'd like to do, but I'd never chased it. I'd never really put my skin in the game. And in that moment where I saw the email, I realized that was my truth. That was something I really wanted to do. And then the email came back from the publisher saying, that was a great talk, but I don't see how it would be a book. And I almost cried, because in having that opportunity put on the table, I realized that was something I really did want to do as part of my career journey and my life journey. So I had a little moment, 10 seconds of courage moment, and I jumped on my computer, and instead of accepting the no, and I think professionally I had accepted no's too easily in the past, I went, I'm not going to accept that no. I'm going to give you a reason to say yes. So I emailed him back and I said, I know how it would be a book. Can I please come in and tell you face to face? And I think that's part of knowing who you are through trial and error as well. I knew that via email it was easy to say no to me, but if you can see my little face, it's harder to say no to.
Exactly. You are a martial arts expert after all.
And I could kill him, yes. But I just knew that if I had the opportunity to almost interview, if I had the opportunity to put myself out there in person and not take no for an answer, I might get this opportunity. So I did. I had to wait a few weeks for that meeting, but I walked out of that meeting with the book deal. And it was another moment of like a little moment of pride for myself, because I just knew that in the past I'd given up too easily on things, as I think we all do sometimes, and I'd been dissuaded too easily. So, it's like putting yourself out there with that extra bit of vulnerability. What I've learned in the last few years is when you do that, sometimes you get this huge reward. So I spent a year writing a book, and it's just been released a few weeks ago. It's in all good bookstores and available on the internet. And it's been a beautiful journey, and I'm getting great feedback about it. And I tried to fill it with all of the tools that I've spent 20 years learning from my sensei. He's an amazing, wise man, and he very much tested me over the years with practical tools and mental tools, psychological things that I could go away and practice, exercises. He gave me things to write down. He gave me ways of literally changing my thinking about myself that have changed my life.
Oh, it's amazing. Now I'm going to have the link to your book as well on my show notes. So everyone can find 10 Seconds of Courage. People can follow you on Twitter, Nadine, at Nadine Champion. Yes. Your website is, you tell us the website.
It's nadinechampion.com. So there's it's a one-stop shop. You can get the book there and also watch the YouTube video and some other interviews that I've done. And it's hopefully, if it makes sense to you, there'll be something in it for you that you can practically take away and use in your own life, whether it's your professional life or your personal life, immediately.
And I have to say, Nadine Champion is an amazing woman. She's warm, she's wonderful, she shows her vulnerability, and she's just lovely to know. So I'm really, really lucky. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. I'd love to talk to you for ages, but I know you've got another podcast interview coming up, as I do as well.
As you do. Thank you, Jane. I find you wildly inspiring. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
It's been wonderful. You know what I'd really like is, would you like to come on again and talk about your philosophies for success? Because I think that would be so valuable, because everything that you've gone through and your resilience is, honestly, it's really inspiring, and you have lots and lots of really good stories and wonderful lessons to share as well. So I'd love to do a part 2 with Nadine Champion.
I would love that, Jane, and it would be an honor, because I find you're the career sensei. You know, I find you quite inspiring, and you lead by example, and I have been following your example for years. So it would be an honor to come back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It'll be lovely. And thank you for your time today. And let's all go out there and practice our 10 seconds of courage.
Excellent.
Okay. Thanks
Nadine.
Jane. Bye.
Bye-bye.
If you'd like to find out how coaching can help you, visit janejacksoncoach.com, where not only will you be able to listen to other fascinating interviews from professionals who've made amazing career changes, you'll also be able to download some free ebooks and guides on how to manage your career effectively.
You've been listening to Jane Jackson Careers. Sign up to receive regular career advice at janejacksoncoach.com.